Brief note here on comments. I made a video about the need to curate comments, explaining why I find that needful. So you can watch that if you're curious. But in general, I really don't like doing things in a way that I have not explained so that there are no surprises. It's important to me. And I've been getting pinged in my mind on one maybe policy I have that I haven't explicitly mentioned. So quickly, I turned on. So YouTube has this function where you can require all comments to be approved, and I recently turned that on. I did it sometime after I made that other video about the need to curate comments. So what this allows me to do is to apply the behavior I described there, the criteria I described in that video, to these comments in a way that I don't have to be reactive. So I don't really have time to constantly monitor this channel. I do it in little gaps in productivity, just like I make these videos the same way at this point in my life. I have other things going on that need to require my main attention. So I curate comments the same way as I'm able. So one of the reasons I'm saying this is if you make a comment and there's a delay before it's posted, it's because I haven't checked it yet. And then if you make a comment and it never gets through, it's because I deleted it before it could get published. And I think I talked sufficiently about the criteria for that in the other video. So mostly, if you make some comment that that people are going to take the wrong way, and I think that there are plenty of folks who would assume that that means saying something negative about what I've said or who I am or who you believe me to be or whatever. And I think if you look across the channel, there are plenty of those that are still here. What I actually mean, what happens much more often is if you make some sort of over the top praise kind of thing where you make it about me, I'm not interested in that. That doesn't help anybody. So nothing on this channel is valuable because of me. If it's valuable, it's because it's from God. And so if your comment draws the focus to me, it's not going to make it here. In the past, I think I've left a few of those on here, and I've tried to sort of softly refocus it onto God. And I just don't have time to do that frequently. So that'll be a comment that's bounced. And then another big one is actually related to the difference between sharing your conclusions about something versus sharing your reasons. So I don't know if I've addressed this anywhere else, but certainly a theme I want to come back to in greater volume. But if you're trying to share information with someone, there are basically three ways you can do it. You can share your conclusions. You can share your reasons for coming to those conclusions. And between them, sharing your reasons is much more effective. Because the only thing that having conclusions demonstrates is that you have conclusions. That might help someone who just didn't know that there was anyone out there who believed this or that. That can sometimes help people, but more often than not, the benefit is going to be limited to helping other people find reasons they were not aware of. And so it's much more effective to share why you believe something than it is to share what you believe. And many YouTube comments are just conclusions. People say, well, the ones that I don't think are worth having on here, they'll say, well, X, Y, Z, God isn't real. And that's the whole comment. Well, thank you for joining the conversation. That's going to persuade exactly 0 people. And it goes the other way too. I've heard other people mention this, complain about this, that if you spam some website with just, Jesus is everything, God is real, Christianity is the answer to all solutions, no one's going to listen to that. Why would they? Tell them why, not what. So when it comes down to sharing reasons, here's another tip. It can be very effective to share your reasons for why you believe something. But usually it's much more effective to take a step back from that. And yes, you believe it. And yes, you have your reasons. You have your experiences that got you to that point. But get into the shoes of the person you're speaking to. And don't ask, why do I believe this? Ask, why should this person believe this? And then query your understanding of it, repackage it, and deliver it. And so those kinds of comments are wonderful. They always make the conversation better. Even if they don't come to the same conclusions, that is not the filter for reasonable people. One of the greatest gifts you can give a reasonable person comes in the form of strong reasons why they shouldn't believe what they do, or why they should believe something different than what they do. They will treasure that. So, it's too frequent the case that too many people dismiss the preference I just described for dismissing things out of hand. When you share a conclusion with someone who's reasonable, you're literally not giving them a reason to believe you. So don't get upset when they don't consider your argument worth listening to, because it's not an argument, it's just a conclusion. In that same token, if you're sharing the reasons you believe it, you've failed to recognize their body of experience and the things that they've thought about, the things they've seen, the things that they've tested. So, a child could have a really good reason for thinking it's a good idea to put their hand on a hot wood stove. And you could say, well, given my experience, which far exceeds yours, and the things that I've tried and the number of times I've been burned, that's not a good idea in my book. And we can't even have a discussion to reconcile those perspectives if you're not willing to believe that there might be an enormous difference in experience or reasons here. And so those are things that are important to consider. Unfortunately, due to human biases, the more ignorant someone is, the less valid their opinion on something is, the fewer their actual reasons for believing something in terms of being tested against what is, the full set of what is, the full set of reality, the more confidence they have. It's an insane thing. And so the people who shout the loudest are usually the least worth listening to. It's an interesting thing, because the wiser someone is, odds are the more they will be carrying with them a belief that they could be wrong about something. And so that humility will manifest through their reluctance to say something. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So you could characterize this, like many other issues, as a needle on a gauge. And I have a tuner. This might be super old-fashioned at this point because everyone has some app for it on their phone, but I have an electronic tuner for tuning guitars. And it's got a needle, and for each note, it'll show you if you're sharp or flat. And that's how it is with this and many other things in life, where it's not good to be sharp or flat. You got to be on the note. And if you aren't sharing your thoughts and they're worth sharing, that is bad. And if your thoughts are not worth sharing and you share them, that is also bad. And odds are, for every person, odds are they're on one side or the other. It's extraordinarily rare to find someone who's in tune, because that actually is tied to a whole bunch of other attributes that are really hard in their own right to obtain and hone. So anyway, this ended up being a little bit about reason. There's another set of thoughts I've been kicking around, meaning to share, that are snippets. A lot of what I'm sharing these days are things that I've been able to isolate from a much larger set of topics, or a much deeper understanding of them. But you can cut them out and just say, okay, here you go. They can be packaged separately. So I hope this explains why some comments won't get through. And, this isn't hundreds of comments. The comments you see are pretty much all of them that are made. But who knows what the future holds. And if you are one of those people who have had a comment withheld, this is why. And I hope that this is actually a means of retaining people in the conversation rather than reducing their participation in that. So we can, it used to be I'd have to block someone from the channel if they kept saying things that I thought were not beneficial. But this way we can keep people participating, and I just make this specific thing. The other thing that I almost forgot to say is I keep getting, again, it's not 100 people, but every once in a while I will get someone saying, how can I contact you? I don't understand why that's difficult to figure out, but whatever. So there is an about section on YouTube, and my email address is right there. It's upwardthought@gmail.com. I do have policies for how I use that email. So again, I might not reply right away, or a lot of times I find things, any sort of question that I'm asked, it's probably answered in what I've written or videos I've made. And so it's always really good to put in the effort to read that stuff if you actually care before asking a question. But it tends to be the case that those interactions aren't always very valuable. People get excited when they first start to hear this stuff, and then again, the needle, right? It's too much or too little. And the too much people, they get very excited, but their actual traction in life as far as living the gospel isn't so great. And so there really isn't anything that I can do to help those folks. And so I can't take the time to do for them what they won't do for themselves. And then also things can go disastrously wrong when people just get weird and obsessive. And so it's funny because this is also a pattern. Like, one of the things I think some people criticize me for is trying to amass followers or whatever, set myself up as some, I don't know, leader of a movement or something. Actually, most of my efforts with people, my interactions with people, is pushing them away. And that will only continue to increase, because there's really nothing I can do for most people to help them. And I'm already doing everything I can through books and videos and things. So the value of some personal interaction is very low. At the same time, the hyper minority of people, so some of my most treasured human associations are with people that I've met through the blog or these videos or whatever. And they're few, they're very few. They don't always last forever. A lot of times something comes up and it's just, we part ways. Some idea or some whatever. And, but in that vein, the few who, against the needle, who should be reaching out aren't, and most who do shouldn't. And so I try to help speed up that chemical reaction by either just ignoring emails that come through. And once you've been through something a certain number of times, you can see it coming a mile away. I mean, Jesus knew who was going to betray him before they did. and it was the Father's purpose for that to happen. But it's not always the Father's purpose for you to walk into a landmine field, or to play Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun, because there's no way that that's going to turn out in any other way. So anyway, I probably rambled enough here. So those are some ideas of what I do and why when it comes to comments and emails. So hopefully that's helpful.